الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Start with the name of Allah, seeking the reward, the success from Allah and from Allah alone. I thank and praise Allah for the blessings, the many endowments that Allah has given without Allah being obligated to give anything. And humbly I ask Allah to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and to protect his Muslim nation from that which he feared for it. Inshallah, this afternoon we will continue reviewing from the text titled the Lucid Word, which itself is a clarification, explanation of the summary of Sheikh Abdullah al-Harari. In our previous sessions, we've discussed the Aqidah, the belief of the Muslims. And we talked about the belief in Allah, the one Creator, the only one who deserves to be worshipped. And the author explained, as Muslims, our reliance upon the correct belief of Tawheed, knowing that there is only one Creator. This one Creator is not like the creations at all. And differentiating between the Creator and the creations. We discussed the belief in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and knowing that he is truthful in what he conveyed, and all of it is true, and we believe in it without any doubt. The author moved on to discuss the obligation of the prayer and discuss the rules of purification and prayer, so that this act of worship is performed correctly by us, inshallah, in a way that is accepted and will be a benefit for us on the day of judgment. And we have concluded those two sections, and we have reached the book of Zakah. And the author said that Zakah is due as an obligation on camels, cattle, sheep and goats, dates, raisins, staple crops, gold, silver, golden and silver ore and treasure trove, trade articles, and for the foot. An explanation. The author said, Zakah. After the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, completed his discourse about purification and prayer, he began discussing Zakah in accordance with the convention of his predecessors. And this is the way, the style of the authors, the scholars and authors of texts of this nature. They will talk about the belief. They will talk about purification and prayer. And then we'll review and discuss the subject of Zakah. So section 21, clarifying the rules of Zakah. Zakah is due as an obligation on specific types of wealth and on personhood. So there are some things, some wealth, some things that one might own that may be subject to Zakah. And the personhood, the fact that one is alive during the month of Ramadan may make that person one whom Zakah is due for. Hence, he stated that paying Zakah is obligatory on livestock. Which livestock? Namely, camels. Whether these camels are one-hump camels or they're two-hump camels. Cattle. This includes the cows, the oxen, the water buffaloes. And ghanam. Ghanam is an Arabic word. It means sheep and goats. So these sheep and goats, together, they are a ghanam. And these sheep and goats, they are subject to Zakah. It is also obligatory to pay Zakah on fruits of palm trees and grapevines, namely dates and raisins. Dates, they grow on palm trees. Raisins, they grow on the grapevines. I just want to go back just a moment, please. So these animals, this livestock, the camels, the cattle, and this ghanam, the sheep and goats, they are the animals that one would pay Zakah on because they are the livestock. So if a person had, for example, on his farm, he had ostriches or chickens or emus, for example, these by themselves, they are not subject to Zakah because they are livestock. Rather, the camels, the cattle, and the ghanam, the sheep and goats, are what is subject to Zakah because of this category of livestock. And for fruits, this category of fruits is the fruits of the palm trees and the grapevine. So the dates and the raisins. The author said, and on staple crops that are consumed during times of food sufficiency. So these crops, these staple crops that the people normally eat, they will eat them when there is plenty of food around because they are foods that one can live off of. Staple crops that one can subsist because of this. They support and they sustain the human body for what keeps them alive, such as wheat. And we eat wheat all day. The cereal they make is out of wheat. The bread that we eat is made out of wheat. These are things that can sustain a person, or barley, chickpeas, corn, and the like. Contrary, so not what is consumed for sustenance in a time when the food got real tight, when there was nothing else but that. So a person might eat, for example, fenugreek. Everything, all right, he ain't eating that for food to sustain himself, but at times got tight, he would eat this instead. But that's not subject to Zakah. That's clear? Alhamdulillah. Yeah. It is also obligatory to pay Zakah on the two precious metals, gold and silver. In this text, the author said gold and silver when coined. Let's continue reading. So it's obligatory to pay Zakah on the two precious metals, gold and silver. The author said when coined. However, there's a difference in opinion regarding permissible jewelry made from gold and silver. Okay. So without a doubt, gold and silver, you got gold and silver coins, as the cat is due on that. You got, like they sell them minted gold bars, as the cat is due on this. There is a difference in opinion about if there was gold jewelry that a person had, gold jewelry that a person was permitted to have. Like, the men do not wear gold jewelry. The woman, she can wear gold jewelry. So if she has this and she owns this, is Zakah due upon this? Some say yes, others say it is not. Zakah is also obligatory on gold and silver ore. And what is, that was coming. And golden and silver treasure trove. The ore is gold or silver extracted from the place where Allah created them. So you go out, you got your pickaxe, you go somewhere where gold is at, you dig up some gold, you got it, mashallah. The cat is due upon this. And this zakat is due on the golden and silver ore after the ore has been cleaned from the soil that surrounds it. And the treasure trove, what is the treasure trove? It is gold or silver which was buried during the era of ignorance, so over 1,400 years ago. If one were to come across this treasure trove, was buried, he finds it somehow, there are signs. Maybe, you know how they have coins that might have a picture of John F. Kennedy on it, or George Washington, and it might say 2021 or whatever. It's signs that you know the time period that these coins were from. Similarly, with that gold or silver in this treasure trove, it might be a picture of, or signs of, that show what time this treasure trove is from. The zakat is also obligatory on trade articles. What are trade articles? These are commodities a person conducts trade with to gain profit, like the one who sells clothes, sugar, salt, horses, and what is similar. So we mentioned when we talked about the livestock that a horse, the cat is not doing it simply because it's a horse and it's livestock that he has. Rather, if he uses these horses, he buys horses and he sells horses, he does this and he makes money this way. He's trading these horses. Now it's a trade article. And zakat may be due upon it, something that's subject to zakat. Just like if he buys sneakers and he gets them and he sells them. He does this over and over. He flips that money, he gets more. That's what he does. That's how he makes his money. It's a trade article for him. It would be something that is subject to zakat. The author said, as for the zakat paid for personhood, it is called zakatul fitr, and it will be discussed later. So what the author did for us there is he explained to us what are the things that are subject to zakat, and made it clear these animals, like the camels, the cattle, the sheep, and the goats, they're subject to zakat. So if you got that, pay attention because it's subject to zakat. Dates and raisins, if you got that, you need to pay attention because it may be subject to zakat. Staple crops, all right, that's subject to zakat. Gold, silver, gold and silver ore, treasure trove, these are things that are subject to zakat. And trade articles, you're a person that involves yourself in trade. You buy articles, you sell them. This is how you make your money. Pay due attention to the chapter of zakat. So after the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, mentioned the types of wealth on which paying zakat is obligatory, he began discussing the conditions under which zakat becomes due on each of them. He said, the first quotum, or nisab for camels. And what is a quotum? What is the nisab? This is this first amount, that if you have this amount at this point, zakat is due upon it. So this first quotum for camels is 5. So one who has 5 camels, all right, zakat will be due upon him. The first quotum is 30 head of cattle for having cattle. So for the cattle, the cows, the bulls, water buffaloes, it's 30. And 40 sheep and goats for the one who has sheep and goat. And before one has that, before he has 5 camels, he got 4 camels, zakat is not due upon him. He has 30 cows, 30 cattle, he has 28, 29, zakat is not yet due upon him. You got 37 ghanim, 37, you got 27 sheep and 10 goats. That's 37. Zakat is not due upon him. The author said, zakat is not due prior to this set quotum. That is, no zakat is due before the camels, cattle, or ghanim reach the aforementioned numbers. Okay. So now we know what the number is. Sheikh then breaks it down. He says, in order for zakat to be obligatory, a lunar year must elapse after having the quotum. So he had, for example, 4 camels. That day that he gets 5, now his number reaches 5. A full lunar year has to go by, has to elapse on those 5 camels before the zakat is due. And the livestock must have grazed in a public pasture. This means that the livestock must have grazed by its owner or the one that he authorized to do that in a public pasture. A public pasture that is owned, communally shared among the people. And it has no specific owner. So because of this, there is no zakat is due on animals whose feed is brought to them. And no zakat is due if he just let his animals loose and they go graze on their own. Even if they went to that public place, but they did that by themselves and they came back after they ate at nighttime, when they come back. In that case, the zakat would not be due on those animals. Also, the livestock must not be working animals, such as animals that are used for plowing or transporting water. Animals that are put to work, like the plowing animals, are not subject to zakat. That's clear? The due zakat, so we talked about what's zakat is due on. Then we went into talking about these animals, these livestock that is due on. We mentioned some exceptions that are not subject to zakat. And now we're going to talk about what it is that has to be paid. What is this due zakat? The due zakat on every 5 camels is a sheep or goat. And this means that one can offer either a sheep, but what kind of sheep? A sheep that has completed 1 year of age, or a sheep that lost its baby teeth. or a 2-year-old female goat. Now the obligatory zakat for 10 head of camels is 2 ghanam, 2 sheep or goats. For 15 is 3. For 20 is 4. And for 25, it's what? One might say it's 5. 5 ghanam, but no. For 25, it is a 1-year-old female camel. So we got camels. If they reach that nisab, and reach that quota, he has 5. These is camels that he take out to a place that's not owned by anyone. He lets them eat, they come back. Okay. He had them for a year. He has to pay, zakat is due on them now. What does he pay? He pays one of these ghanam, a sheep or a goat. At least it's a 1-year-old sheep, or as small as his baby sheep, or a 2-year-old female goat. This is what he pays. But he got camels. Where are you going to get a goat from? Maybe he would go somewhere, he would buy a goat, and he would give that as zakat. If he had 10, it's 2. If he had 15, it's 3. If he had 20, it's 4. But if he had 25 camels, what he pays as zakat now, it is a camel. A 1-year-old female camel. And the due zakat on 40 ghanam, 40 sheep or goats, is one of them, a sheep goat. Either a 1-year-old sheep or a 2-year-old female goat. Now the due zakat on every 30 head of cattle is a 1-year-old bull. For every 40 head of every 40 head of cattle, a 2-year-old female cow is due. Any amount of livestock between the set quotums is exempt. It's not subject to zakat. So we got 30. Okay. He knows, a 1-year-old bull. He got 33, 37, 38, 36. The 1-year-old bull is what is paid. When he gets to 40, then the 2-year-old female cow is due. What's in between is not subject to zakat. It's exempt. Now, if one's livestock exceeds this, the zakat is also due on what is beyond that, is beyond what we've discussed. And the details of that are acquired from books that are larger than this summary. And this person, this respective person, whoever he is, he has what is beyond what we've discussed. He's obligated to find out what that is. He needs to know what is obligated to learn about that Allah made obligatory on him to pay on such extra animals. That's clear about the animals? Alhamdulillah. The first quotum of dates, raisins, and crops which people subsist on during times of food sufficiency is 5 waqas. And no zakat is due on what is left in 5 wasaqs. And what is this? This nisab, what is this minimum? It is the equivalent of 300 sa', according to the sa' of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because 1 wasaq is equivalent to 60 sa'. That's the total of 5 is 300. And a sa' is equivalent to 4 mood. And a mood is the fill of an average sized pair of cupped hands. For this reason, the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, according to the sa' of the Prophet, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this is a standard unit which is still existed in Al-Hijaz, where Mecca and Medina and Taif are at. And also among the rules that pertain to the staple crops is that crops of the same year are combined to determine if the quotum is reached. And that's the case if they are of the same kind and that they were harvested within 1 year of each other. In which case, zakah is due if the sum of both harvests together complete the quota, even if they differ in type. However, crops of a different kind are not combined to complete the quota. So barley and wheat wouldn't be combined. So one had 3 wasps of the barley and 3 of the wheat. No zakat is due on them. He doesn't add them together and say, all right, I got 6, so now we'll pay zakat. No zakat is due on it because they're not combined and neither of them reach 5 wasps. The author says, so if a person has barley and wheat, that's what I just said, mashallah. So if a person had barley and wheat, each being less than 5 wasps, there's no obligation on him to pay zakat, even if the sum of both would be 5 wasps, because they are 2 different kinds, and one may not be added to the other to complete the quota. But if a person had 2 types of the same crop, like he had Egyptian wheat, and he had maybe Ohio wheat. In this case, he would combine both of them. And if they added up to a wasp, to the 5 wasp, then the cat would be due on it. So he had 3 of the Egyptian wheat and 3 of the Ohio wheat. They would come together, and it's the 6th. And now the zakat is due on this. The zakah on dates and raisins is due once the fruit ripens. Even if only 1 grape or date acquires ripeness. The fruit's ripeness is determined by the appearance of certain properties wherein it is normally sought for consumption. So people normally eat it, such as the change in color regarding grapes that undergo color changes, or else different indicators of maturity. And zakat is also due on staple crops when the grain hardens. And although zakat is due when the aforementioned occurs, it is not valid to offer it as zakat until after the dates have dried. The grapevine berries become raisins, and the wheat has been separated from its spikes, etc. So, as you see, with this, these staple crops, these dates and raisins and these staple crops, the zakah, the nisab, this figuring out is all based on the volume of the articles and not the weight. So it is dependent on the volume of the articles, whether it's the grapes, whether it's the dates, or those staple crops. The author said 1/10 is due on the dates, raisins, and staple crops that are watered without expense or significant work, such as when the crops are irrigated by rain or river water. In such case, the due zakat on 300 size, which is 5 wasq, is 30 sa. And half of that, half of 1/10 is due on the crops, dates and raisins that are irrigated with expense or work, such as if they are irrigated with water transported on animals from its source, whether it's a river or whatever, to the crops, or by using a big water wheel that is turned by animals, or a water pump. If that's what the case, then the due Zakah on 300 sides is 15 sides. So 1/20th or 1/2 of 1/10. And due Zakah on what exceeds the aforementioned quotum is paid proportionally. Even if the surplus, even if the extra amount was just a small amount. Why? Because exemption between the set quotums does not apply here like it does with the animals, the livestock that we just mentioned. And no Zakah is due on the crops, the dates, the raisins, if it's below that quotum. It's below the 5 wasl. No Zakah is due on that. However, one is entitled, one can make a voluntary payment. That's clear about alhamdulillah. The quotum of gold. So we talked about the animals. We talked about the plants, the dates and raisins and the staple crops. And now we're talking about the gold and silver. So the nisab, the quotum of gold is 20 mithqals. So a mithqal is a measure of weight which equals to the weight of a golden dinar, which is approximately, it says 4.25 grams. So the quotum of gold is 20 of these, or about 85 grams. And that of silver is 200 dirham. And 1/40th, or 2.5%, is due on both gold and silver if they reach the quotum. And the surplus beyond the quotum is calculated proportionally, even if the excess amount was a small amount, just like with the plants, the agricultural goods. And it is a requirement that 1 year of ownership elapses on them after reaching the quotum. However, the Zakah on the gold and silver extracted from ore or taken from the treasure trove, as long as it's reached that quotum, it must be paid immediately. So it's not a condition that a whole year has elapsed on that. You went and picked up some gold, you found the treasure trove, that Zakah is due on it right away if what you have reaches the nisab, the quotum. Although they are offered after the ore has been cleaned from soil, the amount due for mined materials differs from that which is required to be paid on treasure trove. So 1/40th, or 2.5%, is paid on the mined materials, as is the case for the other gold and silver. But for the treasure trove, 1/5 is due in Zakat. So that's 20%. It's a lot more than 2.5%. This is due to the work and expense of purifying the ore from the soil. And the same expense, the same effort, is not the same case as somebody just finding a treasure trove. So that's clear? Alhamdulillah. So now the author has moved on to talk about the trade articles. And the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, the quotum of Zakah on trade articles is the quotum of gold or silver with which they were purchased. And this is because Zakah on trade articles is assessed on the basis of what they were purchased with. Hence, if they were bought with gold, Zakah is due if the trade article's market value has reached the gold Zakah quota. And if they were bought with silver, Zakah is due if the trade article's market value has reached the silver Zakah quota. And if they were purchased with something other than gold or silver, they are valued based on what is mostly in circulation of gold and silver in his area. That's clear? That's clear? Alhamdulillah. All right. Consideration of the quotum is held off until the end of one lunar year. Therefore, if trade goods reach the quotum at the end of the year, Zakah is due. Otherwise, it is not. The amount due, the amount paid in Zakah, is 1/40 of the value of the trade articles. So the merchant, he gives gold if the trade articles were assessed in gold, or he would give silver if the trade articles were assessed in silver. Now, the mixed wealth of two or more persons is the same as the wealth of one person in regards to the quotum and the due Zakah. So 2 people, 3, 4, 5, however many, they get together, they partner up. I'll read what the author said first. So if the merger is enacted and the total wealth reaches the quotum, all partners pay the Zakah as if the owners of the combined wealth are a single person. And this is true if the conditions for mixing wealth are met, which are learned from more comprehensive books. So they come together, they form a partnership of the like. They get these trade articles. If they purchase these trade articles in silver, well, then the nisab will be based on silver. If it's in gold, it's in gold. If it's other than that, like was mentioned, and what was the most circulated in that place where they're at. Time lapses. 1 year goes by. They look and see, just like if it was one person, is the nisab reached? And if it is reached, then just like one person pays what is due, these different partners pay proportionally what is due. So one partner, he had 25%. He pays 25% of what is due. There was another partner, maybe he had 50% of the business. He pays 50% of what is due, and so on. And now the author, inshallah, will explain Zakat al-Fitr. The Zakat al-Fitr is obligatory upon every Muslim for himself and upon those whom he is obligated to support, if they are Muslims, provided that they live through the last part of Ramadan. This means that they were alive through sunset of the last day of Ramadan, and the first part of Shawwal, which is the month following Ramadan. In other words, their life must remain through the space of time previously mentioned, not under the final death throes due to the departure of the soul. Therefore, if someone dies before sunset or is born afterwards, it is not an obligation to pay zakat for them. That's clear? So this person, they weren't alive during Ramadan. If the last of the Ramadan, zakat is not due. It's not an obligation to pay zakat for them. And it is obligatory on this Muslim to pay this zakat for himself, for the ones that he's obligated to support, if he possesses a surplus. So he got more than what covers his debts, including the deferred debts, what covers the clothing that he needs. These clothing needs that are suitable for both himself and those he is obligated to support. Lodging, a place to stay that's suitable for him and his dependents. His sustenance, food that he can eat, and the sustenance of those whom he must support, like his wife, his young children, and his poor parents. And no, just briefly, the parents, your Muslim parents, the child, the pubescent child, although he's still that person's offspring, he's still that person's son or daughter. But this one, if his parents are poor and he is able to, he is obligated to support them. Even if this parent of his was someone who was strong, healthy, able-bodied, he could go find some work. His mother, she could go find some work. But even if they left that out, then his offspring, this child of theirs, is obligated to support them. So he has this for the day of the Eid al-Fitr and the night after it. So he possesses that surplus, beyond what covers his debts, what covers the clothing needs for himself and for his dependents, the lodging, the sustenance for himself and the ones that he supports. For that first day of Shawwal, the Eid, the day of the Eid, and the night that follows it, the second night of Shawwal. He has enough for that. In this case, the zakat is due upon him. If he doesn't, then the zakat is not due upon him. And the due zakat for each free individual is a sa' of the most common staple crop of that area. The most, author said, the most common staple crop is wheat in countries as Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine, and Egypt. Rice in parts of India and Indonesia, corn in parts of Ethiopia, and others in other countries. And in Philadelphia, the most common staple crop is wheat. He pays one sa' for himself and one sa' for each of those he is obligated to support, as has been described. And it is forbidden to delay payment beyond the sunset of the day of Eid without an excuse. An example of an excuse is that it is recommended, it is good to pay the zakat if among those whom you know is eligible to receive zakat is a family member of yours, one that you have these blood ties with. What if this were the case, but you couldn't get to him until beyond that time? This is an example of an excuse. and know that the intention in the heart to pay zakat is necessary for every type of zakat. And it is sufficient to have this intention upon apportioning the amount to be paid as zakat. So by him taking that, whatever it is that he's paying as zakat, separating that from the rest of it that he has. So for example, we talked about the ghanam, the sheep and the goats. He got 40 of them. He's ready to pay one as the zakat. By him taking it away from the rest of them, setting it aside, this is where he would have the intention. Or, for example, for the zakat or flit, now he's taking his wheat, he's giving as zakat, he's putting it to the side, separating from his other wheat. This is when he has this intention. His intention is something like, I intend this to be the obligatory zakat on what I own, for example. Or I intend this to be the sadaqah, which is an obligation on what I own. Or the zakat on my person and the people I am obligated to pay for. That's clear? That's clear? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, we'll stop here. And we ask Allah to make us among those who are quick to obey Him, to fulfill our obligations, all of them, quickly. And we ask Allah to protect us from miserliness. And we ask Allah to make our sustenance, our rizq, something that we give for the sake of Allah, seeking His reward. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khair. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim.